Most people think of the 90s sci-fi boom as all big explosions and flashy spaceships.
What are you telling me, that this ship is alive?
But under all that noise, there were some stranger films doing something completely different. They looked at memory and identity and fear in a way that didn't get much attention at the time. These movies slipped through the cracks. But they're worth going back for, like the one where a man is sent back in time to stop a plague he might have imagined. 12 Monkeys follows James Cole, a prisoner from a future where most of the human population has been wiped out by a virus that spread sometime around the mid-1990s. Scientists in this underground future society believe they can trace the virus's origins by sending someone back in time. But someone is Cole, who is haunted by a recurring dream of a man getting gunned down at an airport in front of a young boy. He lands first in the wrong year, gets locked in an asylum, and meets an unstable activist named Jeffrey Goins, whose father works in virology. From there, the plot spirals through different time periods and layers of memory as Cole tries to figure out whether the so-called army of the 12 Monkeys is really to blame or if he's just losing his grip on reality. The answers come slowly, and when they do, they're more tragic than heroic, with the timeline folding back onto itself in a way that leaves no one fully saved. Behind the camera, Terry Gilliam was adamant that Bruce Willis drop every one of his usual tics. He gave him a list of facial expressions and gestures to avoid entirely, which Bruce actually agreed to. That kind of restraint changed how he approached the role and helped shift public perception of him as more than just an action guy. Brad Pitt was also fighting to shake off his own image, and when he couldn't get the right nervous energy into his scenes, Gilliam literally took away his cigarettes so the withdrawal would come through naturally. The whole set was shaped by this constant tug of war between control and chaos, which is probably why the film still feels so unhinged even when everything fits together by the end. Gattaca takes place in a world where your DNA decides everything, where you live, where you work, whether you even get a chance to try. Vincent Freeman is born the old-fashioned way, without genetic screening, and that means his future is already considered worthless. But he has a plan. He assumes the identity of Jerome Morrow, a genetically perfect man who can't walk, and begins working at the elite Gattaca Aerospace Corporation. He scrubs his skin every morning, hides stray hairs, and passes constant surveillance just to get one shot at space travel. As he trains for a mission to Saturn's moon Titan, a murder inside the company threatens to expose him. Meanwhile, he falls in love with Irene, who is also seen as flawed by the system. What begins as deception turns into a quiet rebellion, not just against Gattaca, but against an entire world designed to make people like him disappear. When Ethan Hawke took the role, he saw Vincent not as a symbol of resistance, but as a man quietly dying to matter. He would spend hours with co-star Jude Law, who played Jerome, working out tiny details, how Jerome would hand over blood samples, how Vincent would learn to copy his posture, even how the two would pass for each other without saying a word. Law, for his part, treated the shoot like a theater production, diving so deep into Jerome's bitterness that he barely spoke between takes. The real filming locations, including the Marin County Civic Center, helped shape the sterile perfection of the world, but they weren't easy to work in. The crew fought leaks, cold, and constant noise, hiding buckets off camera to catch the rain. For a movie about precision, the actual shoot was messy, long, and emotionally draining. That tension is what holds the story together, both on screen and off. Contact follows Dr. Ellie Arroway, a radio astronomer whose entire life is shaped by a deep longing to make sense of the universe and a childhood marked by loss. She spends years scanning the stars for signs of extraterrestrial life and is constantly dismissed by her male colleagues and defunded by skeptical institutions. Then one day, her team intercepts a repeating signal from the star Vega. Buried within the broadcast is a message, mathematical, layered, and undeniably intelligent. Along with it comes blueprints for a strange, one-person machine. Ellie is chosen to make the journey, only to find herself standing on an alien shoreline with a being in the form of her father. When she returns, she has no physical proof that she traveled anywhere at all, and the people in power call it a hoax. She is left defending an experience that may never be verified, but that she believes with everything she has. Jodie Foster was drawn to the role, not just for its science, but for its emotional isolation. She worked closely with Carl Sagan before he died, and saw Ellie as someone grieving the entire time. Grieving her father, her reputation, even the possibility that she might be wrong. The opening sequence, which starts in deep space and pulls all the way back to Earth, required effects that were nearly impossible at the time. The mirror shot, where young Ellie runs up the stairs and the camera flips inside out, took weeks to choreograph and was almost cut. The film reused real news anchors and even digitally inserted Bill Clinton to blur the line between fiction and documentary. This created headaches for the studio, as White House lawyers got involved and news networks became uneasy. Still, Sagan and the producers insisted on keeping it all in, convinced that the moment demanded more than just drama. It needed the kind of realism that could make people pause and ask if this was something that could actually happen. Dark City opens with John Murdoch waking in a bathtub, confused and alone, beside the body of a murdered woman. He doesn't remember who he is, but he knows something is wrong. The city he stumbles through never sees daylight, and people around him seem stuck in patterns they didn't choose. At midnight, time freezes. Buildings change shape, people collapse, and silent, pale figures called the Strangers rearrange the city and its citizens like pieces on a board. Murdoch begins to resist. He stays awake. He starts to change the city the way the Strangers do. He learns that none of this is Earth, and none of these memories are real. It's a space station where aliens are running a human experiment, trying to understand individuality by rewriting lives. Jennifer Connelly played Emma, Murdoch's supposed wife, a lounge singer whose identity shifts with every rewrite. At the time, Connelly was looking for roles that moved beyond her earlier teen image. Director Alex Proyas saw in her a mix of vulnerability and control that made her perfect for the role. The art department lit her like a painting, her scenes designed to feel both grounded and dreamlike. She performed the vocals for her club scenes, filmed on sets that mirrored old noir stages, and she committed to moments in the film that were raw and difficult, including emotionally exposed and nude scenes that she chose because they matched the tone of a character who no longer knows herself. The entire film was shot on tightly constructed sound stages in Sydney, where the cast worked long hours in windowless spaces. That darkness wasn't just visual, it shaped how they acted. The performances, especially Connelly's, feel like fragments of memories that might have belonged to someone else. Cube starts with a man waking up in a room shaped like a cube, with hatch doors on every wall. He crawls into the next room and is instantly sliced to pieces by an invisible trap. That's how the story begins. No explanations, no introductions. 7 strangers, each with different skills and personalities, are trapped inside a shifting maze of cube-shaped rooms. Some are booby-trapped, others are not. No one knows how they got there or who built the cube. They argue, form alliances, try to map the space, and slowly turn on each other. One of them, a young woman named Levin, figures out that the numbers etched on each hatch are mathematical clues to the traps. Another, a man named Kazan, seems unable to communicate until it turns out his mind holds the key to escape. The cube isn't just dangerous, it's unknowable, and it doesn't care. Director Vincenzo Natali had one cube-shaped room to shoot in. Every room in the movie is actually the same set, just lit in different colors. The budget was small, so they had to create a whole world with almost nothing. The actors often got disoriented on set because the space felt repetitive and claustrophobic. That tension bled into their performances. The characters begin as types, the cop, the genius, the cynic, but the film strips that away until only fear and instinct remain. The movie never explains who built the cube or why, and that decision wasn't due to budget limits. It was the point. The cube is bureaucracy turned into architecture, a system that exists just to exist. That cold idea, combined with the movie's stripped-down style and rising paranoia, made it a lasting cult film. Event Horizon follows a rescue crew sent to the edge of the solar system to investigate a ship called the Event Horizon that vanished years earlier and has now mysteriously returned. The ship was designed to fold space using an experimental gravity drive, but something went wrong. Instead of jumping across space, the Event Horizon seems to have passed through another dimension, one that resembles hell more than any known part of the universe. As the crew explores the ship, strange visions begin to affect each of them. They see manifestations of past trauma. The hallucinations grow violent, paranoia and dread spread, as it becomes clear that the ship brought something back with it. Dr. Weir, the scientist who built the gravity drive, becomes obsessed and unhinged, as if the ship is calling to him. The rest of the crew tries to survive, as the line between reality and nightmare dissolves. Director Paul W.S. Anderson originally filmed over 30 minutes of additional footage that showed in disturbing detail what happened to the ship's previous crew. These scenes included graphic depictions of mutilation and suffering that were so intense some actors felt physically ill. After test audiences reacted with shock, the studio cut most of it. Much of this footage is now lost, and fans continue to search for it. Actor Sam Neill later said that shooting some scenes left people genuinely disturbed. The production used rotating corridors and sets filled with machinery that looked half organic, like metal fused with flesh. One actor reportedly refused to continue a scene due to how intense the imagery was. Though the film underperformed on release and was dismissed by many critics, it developed a devoted cult following. The mystery of what was cut from Event Horizon has become as much a part of its legacy as the story itself. Fire in the Sky begins in the woods of Arizona, where a group of loggers finishes their shift and drives home through the forest. Along the way, they see a strange light. One of them, Travis Walton, gets out to look. A beam of energy hits him, and he vanishes in front of their eyes. The others panic and flee. Days later, after being accused of murder and subjected to lie detector tests, they're shocked when Travis reappears, naked and traumatized, with no memory of where he's been. Over time, fragments return, memories of being trapped in an alien ship, of floating, of surgical experiments carried out by beings who don't seem to recognize pain or fear in human terms. His experience is told in flashbacks, filtered through trauma and disbelief. Director Robert Lieberman stayed skeptical about the story. He thought it could have started as a prank or hallucination that spiraled into something more serious. But he worked closely with the real Travis Walton, who was soft-spoken, intelligent, and deeply convinced of what he'd experienced. The abduction sequence was built with help from industrial light and magic and was shot to feel like a nightmare, not an adventure. There were no silver suits or shiny consoles, just dark, wet walls and silent tools. Actor Robert Patrick, who played Walton's friend Mike, felt personally invested. He tried to embody the shame and isolation of being publicly doubted, and later found out he was distantly related to the real Mike Rogers. Walton himself appears briefly in a cameo. The shoot took place in cold, remote areas of Oregon and Arizona, adding to the cast's discomfort. What makes the film linger isn't just the alien scenes, but the social fallout. The way a community turns on people when faced with something they can't explain. The fifth element takes place in a future where Earth is threatened by an ancient force that returns every 5,000 years. The only thing that can stop it is a weapon made of 4 elemental stones and a fifth piece, known only as the fifth element, that turns out to be Lilu, a humanoid woman genetically reconstructed from a sample of ancient DNA. She escapes government control and crash lands into the flying taxi of Corbin Dallas, a former soldier drifting through life. Together they travel across the galaxy to collect the stones and stop the apocalypse, chased by mercenaries, religious orders, and a corporate warlord named Zorg. It's loud, strange, and full of neon. Director Luc Besson had been writing the script since he was a teenager. When production finally started, he had full creative control and pushed his team to build entire cities, costumes, and alien races from scratch. The costumes, designed by Jean-Paul Gaultier, were outrageous and often barely functional. Milla Jovovich's famous orange bandage outfit was held together with fishing wire. Shooting was chaotic, especially for scenes on the giant luxury spaceship where hundreds of extras worked in layered prosthetics under heat lamps. Chris Tucker, who played the flamboyant Ruby Road, improvised much of his role, often confusing Bruce Willis mid-scene. Jovovich had to learn a fictional language made up of over 400 words, and she spent hours in makeup every day. Despite the effort, critics were divided on release. Some called it incoherent or shallow, but over time, audiences returned to its visual creativity and offbeat tone. Today, it's considered a cult sci-fi classic, part cartoon, part opera, and entirely its own.